At this time, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And Terry, would you do the roll call?
Commissioner Feller?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Foster?
Here.
Commissioner Kohler?
Here.
Commissioner Hartline?
Here, sir.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Kohler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
We also have executive session minutes for the same meeting. Are we okay with those?
Motion to approve the executive session.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Kohler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Did Kevin leave it? Did we commit something?
Yes, you have one building permit, parcel number 0606043755. It's at 105 Ebenezer Church Road in Jonesboro for a Jerry Dillo for a garage, no subdivision, no floodplain, recommended for approval.
Make a motion we approve it.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Kohler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Darren, have anything on county comments?
No, I don't know, he had to step out for a minute, but he was working on the tax levies and stuff with me this week, so I don't think he has a presentation to present.
Okay. Just drop down under new business. Has everyone had a chance to look at the bills?
Yes. Make a motion we pay our bills.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Kohler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is budget discussion. We still have, I don't know, 3 or 4 officers to meet with.
Yes.
And then we should be wrapping it up. It's very close. Next on the agenda is the University of Illinois Extension Board appointment, Ruby Lingle. I have a letter of recommendation from them recommending Ruby Lingle, and at this time I'll make the motion for that appointment.
Yes.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Kohler?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is Union County Senior Citizens Council contribution. We had a request from the Senior Citizen Council, Shirley Bauer, who's the treasurer, that once the money reaches a certain level that we would contribute. We usually contribute $6,000 back into that account for them so that they can help offset the payment of meals. Is there any more discussion?
Is there a specific amount that they're requesting?
No.
They They don't really request a specific amount, they just, she put in her letter that once it drops below 6,000, that they're supposed to, that they like funding. I looked it up last year, it looked like, I think it was March or April, they dropped to about $2,500 in their account. The county gave them $6,000, take them back up to $8,500. They're at about $3,500 in their account now. It's completely up to the board how much you guys want to give them. We budget $20,000 every year to be spent from that fund, but it doesn't all necessarily go to them. Like, we gave $5,000 to the food pantry also. So it's, I mean, there are other,
Do you know the balance offhand?
right now,
Yeah.
it's close to $3,500.
34. More questions? We can, you know, we can do the 6 like we did last time, or if we can do another figure, you know.
We're definitely not gonna hold money from people who need
No.
food, I wanted to make sure that we know what we're approving before we.
No, and what they do is they supplement, they pay for the extra meals out of that. And I'm fine with that, because we have money. I want to make sure that we have enough for seniors in the food pantry, because that's another good thing, and that's what this money's for. So I have no problem. I'll make the motion, we give them $6,000.
Second. Is that max?
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Tover?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Tyler had to leave.
Yes, court.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the resolution supporting the continued operation of the state's attorney's appellate prosecutor for fiscal year 2018. This is something that's been done for as long as I can remember. It helps the state's attorney with the appellate cases. They will provide assistance or aid in the attorneys to do the appellate cases. And I know Tyler always highly recommended that this was money well spent.
Yeah, the only question I have is the recommended $7,000. Is that what we've had in the past?
I can tell you it's the same amount that was last year.
Okay, I just didn't know if that went up, so I'm pleased that it didn't.
It's been that way since I was clerk.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, I have no problem with this.
I make a motion, we approve the resolution.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster? Yes. Commissioner Tover?
yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
We have an approval of a resolution for sale of delinquent property held by the county trustee. This is evidently for delinquent mobile home taxes, and someone has paid the amount required to redeem those taxes. And this is the resolution for that. Yes. The property located is on 940 Brown Section Road. Permanent parcel number 7106.
Bobby, it appears there's two. If you
Yeah, that's what I
Look at
was-
the original, apparently the copy that I have doesn't have both of them, but I think it's right up here in the front. Right
That-
there, yes.
That one? Okay.
Yes, there's two in there. So one, from the parcel numbers, I would say one is a mobile home and one is a regular home.
So we need to approve each one of those?
Mhm.
Okay.
The other one's actually at 90 Adams Street. Adam Powell's addition looks like a milk room, so.
separate resolutions or something?
I would assume so.
It's two separate. Yeah.
Make a motion, we approve the resolution for 940 Brown Section Road.
Second.
Okay. Either one. You need RC number on those? Okay.
Is it Brown Section Road, the mobile home, or the regular parcel?
Well,
The mobile home?
Yeah.
And just so the spreadsheet will tell you the amount they collected was $1,300, well, $1,311.98.
right.
And then for the other one, it's $737.47.
Well, they both say.
The other one says mobile home also.
Yeah, they both say mobile home.
It must be one of the ones where the mobile home's more recent and it's put on a
Right.
real estate tax bill.
Okay.
That's the first. You got the motion, second.
Yeah. Commissioner, this is on the 940 Brown Section Road for the mobile home, 07-106. Commissioner Feller,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Toller,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline.
Yes, sir. This is second. Yeah, I make a motion we approve the resolution on, that parcel number.
140010763.
That's it.
I second that.
Commissioner Feller,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Toller,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline.
Yes, sir.
Terry, let me know when you're ready. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm not ready. You ready? Okay.
Next on the agenda is a resolution setting certain property tax levies for the fiscal year commencing on December the 1st, 2017, and ending on November the 30th, 2018. Okay. This is something that we're required by law to do each year. And like I said in the earlier meeting, this is something we have to follow the last Tuesday in December each year. This lists, the levy lists all the different tax levies for the county. The total is $3,024,834. With bonds, there's another $1,387,107 for a total of $4,411,941. Has everyone had a chance to look at those?
Yes.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve the levies.
Second.
Commissioner Feller,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Toller,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline.
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is a resolution certifying 2017 payable 2018 debt tax levies. Union County has 3 bonds that are outstanding for a total of $1,387,107. A series in 2014 and 2 series in 2010. What we're going to do, we'll approve those, and then following this, we'll do an abatement of the bond indebtedness for the courthouse. So, do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Tiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is a resolution of abating certain property taxes levied for bonded indebtedness. There's 2 bonds. There's a $1,070,000 taxable general obligation bond and a $12,635,000 general obligation bond, alternate revenue source bond, or Build America bond. And what we are going to do is abate the payment, which is actually the payment for the courthouse, because the sales tax is able to cover that. The sum of $1,171,245 is to be abated from the taxes. And do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Tiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is resolution setting for the Union County government holidays. Angela, this is something that you work with, that
Yes,
according to the,
yeah, they're the same holidays that you guys had last year, just updated for the day of the week that they fall on. It's basically it. The holidays that are in the CBAs also.
are there any questions?
Make a motion to approve the dates.
Second. Dale, go ahead.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Tiller?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda is a resolution setting forth the commissioner meeting day schedule. Basically the same setup as in the past, and that works okay for you, Alex? Okay.
I make a motion we approve the dates, the commissioner meetings.
Second.
Commissioner Feller?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Tiller?
Yes,
Commissioner Hartline?
Yes, sir.
those will continue to be on the 2nd and 4th Fridays at 8:30 a.m. Are there any committee reports?
I had none.
Truck came in for Shawnee Development. I wasn't able to attend the meeting this week, but kind of the weather a little bit, but William did go. seems like we had, when the truck came in, we had around 200 senior packs this time.
That's what I was gonna ask, how much was that up? Do you know, William, where's William at?
He had to leave. It was up from 187 to 200. So
Okay, well, I thought it'd be higher than that, so.
what we told them is if another county passes, we'll take what they don't want. So that way we can, because we've got people on lists that are waiting. So.
Yeah. Then just so you know, Alex, that's where a lot of some of the other monies go for the senior citizens is to this, so for the senior packs. And Paul Stairs kind of keeps track of that, and she always comes in and gives a report of how many seniors they give so that they can account for that money. She's on top of that.
And I also want to recognize Grant and the ambulance service for their kind donation. There was like, I think Paula said over 1,700 pounds of food donated, and some cash too, which would have brought the food total up to over a ton. So we're very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Total staff was involved with that.
Yes.
They all,
It's very good.
Would you like to give us an update on the ambulance?
the good news is we have a firm date of January 4th. I forwarded some pictures to Angie. She didn't see them, and I think Max and Danny maybe have seen the
Yeah.
pictures I had sent.
Yep.
I think I said it last meeting, but it bears repeating. This is the most detailed, best build we've ever had. And these folks have been very gracious to work with, very easy to work with. Any requests we've made for changes have been met with no resistance, and I think the county will be very proud when they see this come home.
So you're going forth to pick it up?
Yep.
You gonna try to light the siren on the way home?
Well, you never know, maybe.
Did you say Hope Hardin County was interested in?
We have two counties. I've gotten a call from Alexander County, and Polk County has continued to express interest, and so
I noticed the other day, the only reason I was asking, just being nosy, that one of theirs was pulled in, towed in.
actually Union County helped Polk County through that time period, and they had our truck for about 4 days. We had made arrangements, and I had contacted Angie. We had a letter on file to take care of insurance needs and so on. It's not unusual. It's been done before. They used it, and they've had an opportunity, obviously, to test drive it.
And so it was that one, you gave them that one?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so we need to consider what we think the worth of this truck is before we put it out for bid according to statute, and then see where it comes in, and the board can make a decision from there.
Very good.
Crystal, do you have anything?
I had a couple things. A few years ago, the employees had agreed to give up Election Day in exchange for Christmas Eve. But this year and this coming year, it's not paid on the holidays.
I don't know about them doing an exchange. I do know that they used to have Election Day in some of the 773 collective bargaining agreements. I inquired of Tyler and mentioned them trading a day. He said, I don't know that I would call it a trade. So we pulled the contracts up, the contracts that said they have Christmas Eve off. They're honoring, you get Christmas Eve off. The contracts that don't state they have Christmas Eve off, we're just following the contract. I don't know what the exchange was as far as
It was
the trade
mutually
goes.
agreed between the employees and the board at the time, But-
which employees.
all of the employees.
They came
So
in
why-
here and talked to the board.
Well, I don't think all of the employees came in here, but the union negotiators negotiated with the board for that to happen. So how did it get into some contracts and some that it didn't? How are some employees taking advantage of it and some aren't?
The only thing I would
Should it be the
say
same
is that
across the board for all employees of the county?
it's what, I mean, now the contracts are not the same on various things. Some people get allowances in their contracts, some people don't get allowances, you know, so we are solely following what the contracts say. If there's usually an agreement made after the fact, then they do what's it called? Not,
Addendum.
not an addendum,
Addendum.
addendum to the contract. If there is an addendum to the contract, I don't know about it, I don't see it. And I've inquired and no one has that, so. I've tried to gather as much evidence as I can and all the facts and present it all to the commissioners as far as, what happened. A lot of it is verbal and some of it people aren't even sure about. So I think it must have happened several years ago because the majority of the 773 contracts actually list Christmas Eve and don't list Election Day. And it's not an addendum, it's actually in their contract.
It was when
So-
Commissioner Cunningham was on the board, so it's pretty recent.
And I would say, Crystal, that, for me, if all the courthouse got the same holidays, that would be much easier and better to track. But if it's in some contracts and some not, then we have to go by what's in the contract. And personally, I think everybody ought to get the same holidays because it would be easier to track, and that way we're not, and even the office holder doesn't have to worry about who's got what. So I would love for everybody to have the same holidays. But as of right now, per contract, they don't.
Why is it different though? Why isn't it across the board in everyone's contract?
I guess because when it was negotiated, they didn't put it in. I wish that it was. I wish that they were all the same. But now, us as the board, we just go by the contract, because if we start, and I hate to use the word, but if we start trading, then that puts us in a very unique situation of giving this holiday to somebody that's not on the contract, and then the other person say, well, okay, then if they got a day that's not in their contract, then I get a day that's not in my contract, because, it's just very confusing. I wish, as administrators, everybody ought to get the same amount of holidays on the same day. But right now we don't. So I would just suggest that during negotiations the next time, negotiate to put that in the contract so that everybody has the same holidays. Because it's confusing for us. Because if we do give a holiday or close the courthouse, then we are obligated to pay all those people that if they do have to work, we have to pay those people. And then for the people that don't, then they get a day on the books. And it's very, very confusing. So I wish they did. I don't know. I don't know the conversation you're talking about. I wish if it was brought before the board, I'm sure we'd put it in writing or in the contract. So I don't know if your union rep did not put it in, and if it was an agreement, it should be an addendum and in writing, because we have to deal with it. If it's not in writing and we give it, we're opening ourselves up big time.
So the holidays that you approved today is listed out in everyone's contract. Every one of those holidays are listed out specifically in each contract.
No,
So you could grant Christmas Eve for the rest of the employees outside of the contract, like the rest of the holidays that aren't listed.
if we did, then that would be in addition to, this is the approved holidays that the board. Now, if in their contract it's separate, then we have to adhere to that contract. Just like if it's not, we have to adhere to that contract. So my suggestion would be negotiate it and either put it in there, or as in some cases, that they get all holidays as stated by the county board. That way everybody gets.
Well, that's what
the
my
same.
contract states, which means under the laborers, when I was a laborers employee, I received Christmas Eve.
That's
But
'cause
now
it's in
my
the contract.
contract states the holidays given by the county board, which now I do not receive Christmas Eve anymore. Because the county board is not recognizing that as a holiday for all county employees across the board. It's picked and choose who is
It's
receiving
not
that.
picked and choose by us. We set forth a holiday schedule, but we have to adhere to a contract if it's put in there.
But the language in individual contracts have been picked and choose who receives those holidays and who doesn't.
Not by us. We might have agreed to it, but it is by a union agreement.
Secondly,
Personally, I just wish that everybody would say as prescribed or list it in there so that we're dealing with all the same thing, because right now, it's scattered throughout the system. And that's not a good thing. That's just not a good thing, and I agree with you on that.
I just think it sets precedence for some employees and others not to get it.
But that's to be negotiated with your union.
But it wasn't a negotiation whenever they took election day away, you guys just took it away, or whoever made that decision, because that was a discussion. There was a trade-off for the people that wasn't addressed in the contract specifically, as approved by the board. And I know maybe you didn't know about that, but that person came to me and talked to me about that and said, hey, wouldn't everybody enjoy having Christmas Eve off instead of election day?
And Scott,
And that's the reason why we're.
Oh, and that's right, and I have no doubt that conversation happened, but we're left with how to deal with that.
I understand that.
And I wish that if it was agreed upon, that was an addendum put on the contract, because that way we would be looking at black and white.
Obviously, it's not something that come before the whole board, it was just one person that made that decision to do that.
I'm assuming so, because like I say,
That's the way it happened.
because I can tell you for Dan Hartline, if that was the case, then it would be put in writing, so we wouldn't be dealing with that. I mean, that's the proper way to do those things. That if, you know, I hate to use the word trade, but if that was the way it was approached to you, that it's a trade,
That's what it was told to me.
well, then it should have been put in writing with the union and with the board as an addendum and agreeing to it.
I just trusted the fact that whenever, next time the approvals of holidays was gonna come around, like you're doing today, that was gonna be included in there, and it didn't happen last year and this year, so.
Well-
So they remember to take out the election day, but not add the Christmas Eve.
And
So we lost a holiday.
You can't add it today as an addendum for all the employees?
We could add a whole bunch of days on here, but what I looked at when I looked at this is, what does the state and federal holidays, what are their holidays? Because if we start adding a whole bunch of days, that's just more confusion also. So I sat down with Angie and we looked at what were the state and federal holidays, and that's what we went by.
I understand it needs to be spelled out in there specifically, it would be better for everybody if it was, but they just trusted when they did the contract that the tradition, that's the holidays that were set. What the heck, it was 14, but that wasn't every year, that was only on even years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I wish it was too, Scott. I wish it was too, because that takes all the confusion out, you know.
Well, and I just wanted the board to know what happened in that respect about the holidays, because it's, you know.
Well, and that's why everything needs to be brought before in an open meeting, that if there is an agreement, then let everybody to agree to it.
I agree.
Because when agreements are made like that, then we have to deal with what's
This
left.
is what you have.
And when we have to deal with what's left, the only fair and safe thing to do is go by the contract. That way, we're not left holding the bag, because that's exactly what happened before, is somebody's gonna be left holding the bag. And it just happened to be us.
I agree with that.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. And Crystal, yeah, if everything was just spelled out, written out, it would be easier for everybody. But it's not, and we, like I say, we're just going by the contract. That's all we can do at this point.
I do have a question, Scott. The very first year that agreement was made and they talked about that, did they declare Christmas Eve a holiday? Like the very next year? Did anybody say anything then? Like the first year, like, hey, you were supposed to give us Christmas Eve?
No, I don't know that anybody did.
I don't know how long ago this was.
I know last year they didn't get it, and I told the guys, you're not getting Christmas Eve. And so, no, nothing else was said, and this year comes around and it's the same way. You know, and they just took it, that person's word that that's what was gonna happen, and it didn't, so.
And I'm sorry for that.
Well, I'm just making the point that, understand why we're questioning that, because that's what we assumed was gonna happen.
And I understand that, Scott, but I hope at the same time they understand the decision that we made, of why we made that decision. Because if not, then that's opening up a can of worms, because I, for one, as far as the contract, if you go by the contract, you're not gonna be in trouble. And sometimes it's advantageous to one person and not another, and other times it's the other way around, but you have to go by the contract.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, we can get all that resolved for these contracts coming up.
Well, and I think
Well, that doesn't help now,
I know,
but.
and I think that'll probably be addressed the next time.
Oh, and I hope it is.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Just that 911 passed their budget and was able to help out with the TC reimbursement, $15,000 without dipping into our reserves.
Thank you.
I mean,
Appreciate that.
yeah, you know, it's something that we'll have to revisit every year. Revenue starts going down, so we'd like to keep that reserve for an emergency, but we was able to do that this year without dipping into reserves, so.
And I will say that by what I heard at the meeting, that Angie came down and you all talked, that it was a very educational meeting all the way around. You know, that, and that's the way business should be conducted.
Communication goes a long way.
Absolutely, and you come down and, you know, instead of just asking for things or doing things, you come down and explain why. And I think that maybe you guys on the board, that your eyes were enlightened on some things from our end, and that's the way you conduct business.
I think it was a real good meeting all the way around.
Stop using
Yeah, just to give the board update about the dog, I don't think we're gonna be able to save him. He's, taken him back today. There's a possibility he may do surgery again to find out if there's something he overlooked in there, but, obviously when the stomach flipped, they caught it, we thought in time, but, you know, it was a couple hours that it happened, and it, you know, it shut off blood supply to the stomach and intestines, so he's not eating, he's vomiting still, and not being able to pass what he has ate, so it doesn't sound like it's going to be a good outcome for a dog, so I've already asked Angie about, I know we took out